Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the special meeting of the Lowell City Council to order. As you know, this is a continuation of last night's special meeting. Let us begin with the council prayer. Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Please join me now in honoring America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, thank you. I'm going to ask the assistant clerk to call the roll, please.
Councilor Mendonça?
Here.
Councilor Murcia?
Here.
Mayor Milanazzo?
Here.
Councilor Murphy?
Here.
Councilor Brockett?
Here.
Councilor Caulfield?
Here.
Councilor Dakota?
Here.
Councilor Elliott?
Here.
Councilor Martin?
Here.
9 present.
Thank you. Even though this is a continuation of last night, let me just read the special meeting notice. Notice is hereby given as required by Rule 6 of the City of Lowell City Council rules that the City Council will hold a special meeting of the Lowell City Council in Council Chambers on Thursday, December 1st, 2011 at 6 p.m. Agenda to interview candidates for open position of City Clerk by order James L. Milanazzo and signed by Robert E. Slagle, Acting City Clerk. With that said, I would like to remind my colleagues that we have 2 candidates this evening. The first candidate is Mr. Linehan. I want to invite Mr. Linehan to the table at this time. And what we've been doing, Mr. Linehan, is asking each candidate to give a 2-minute opening statement, and then we're going to begin a round of questioning. And this evening, we're going to begin with City Councilor Rita Murcia. And I'm going to adjourn and move down to sit next to Councilor Broderick. So welcome, Mr. Linehan.
Thank you. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the council for the opportunity to come before you to present myself as a candidate for clerk. And hopefully over the next half hour's worth of time, I'll be able to demonstrate to you why I will be your choice for clerk candidate. I also want to wish everyone a happy and healthy holidays.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Linehan. Thank you for taking the time to come up here and showing an interest in this. I'd like to just make a disclaimer here, because I think it's only fair that this government is transparent. And as the chairperson of Parks and Recreation, I have more opportunity than the rest of my colleagues to go perhaps on occasion before the Board of Parks to bring motions forward. And you have been the chairperson, so I feel a little bit more obligated to speak this way because I know you most of all between all the other candidates that came before us. So I wanted to disclose the fact that on occasion I have spoken before the Board of Parks and you were the chairman. You were very kind and very helpful, and I want to thank you for that. I also want to be a little bit fair since you are another Lowellian, and last night I asked a question of a previous Lowellian, and that was a transparent question, and I think it's only fair that I don't just ask him, but ask you as well. Have you did you at any time give any donations to this last election to any people sitting in front of you this evening?
No, I have not.
You have not. I just wanted to disclose that. You have not given, and I thought it's only fair because I asked a previous candidate that. All right, having said that, I know that it says in your resume that you're very qualified with computers, and this being the technology and digital age, you do bring some expertise to get this program in the clerk's office to the 21st century. We do have a lot of work that has to be done. You're willing to take on this very studious task ahead of you. What training or what could you do? Are you familiar with the Munis system?
I've had exposure to the Munis system in the past when I've been employed by the city to do audits of city municipal government, and I've seen it at work there. To work specifically with data input on it, no, I have not. Over the years as a CPA, I've had to learn various accounting software programs. As the nature has expanded and the intricacies have increased, I've been required to understand different software programs and to work with them.
All right. Now, what is your experience in handling people? I know at the Board of Parks you do a pretty fairly good job, but what training or what type of experience have you had in dealing with people in an office setting?
I've had various different exposure to dealing with personnel. One would be in the office that I served in with my father. There was a small staff there, which I was responsible for. I've also been on a few other organizations and nonprofits where I've been in a position to review personnel and to deal with day-to-day problems. A lot of things are with volunteer organizations, which are very tough when people volunteer their time to give them constructive direction.
Are you familiar, I know you're not an attorney and you really don't have to be in this position. What do you know about the changes to the open meeting laws that were put forth about a year ago? Could you bring the department into compliance with the open meeting laws and the state ethics laws? Are you familiar with any of that?
I'm familiar with that there are laws that I'm required to follow, whether I'm a CPA, whether I'm a public employee, and my awareness of those and implication and to implement those is very important. I deal a lot with Internal Revenue Service law, which is constantly changing, so I know I have to constantly be aware of changes and what effect that they do have on the people that I serve.
Thank you very much, Joe.
We've kind of fallen into what questions each one's going to ask, so I'll just keep with the ones I've asked other candidates, even though we're changing the order a little bit. On your education, you appear to have 2 bachelor's degrees, is that correct? You listed 2. Is that true, or
I have a business administration.
business administration? Oh, just the one? Okay. And have you taken any courses related to public administration?
No, I have not.
Have not. Okay. As far as your skills, what skill do you bring or could you bring to the clerk's office that you feel be essential in that office?
One of the skills I believe I possess is the ability to recognize details. As being a CPA over the years, I've dealt with records. I've learned the importance of them and how important it is to maintain them. And also the organization of how they are presented and when to be able to go back to them. I tend to look at the accounting skills and the clerk skills. One, I'm dealing with numbers, which I have to correlate and present. The other, I'm dealing with data. And I believe the format for most of the stuff would probably be fairly similar.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Martin.
Thanks for being here, Mr. Lenahan, and the questions I've been asking the other candidates have to do with sort of electronic records retention. You know, there are some records that we keep in the clerk's office that are required to be hard copy paper records, and then there are others that I'm fairly certain that don't need to be kept that way, but are kept that way. And so I think we should be moving in a direction of, you know, keeping things on computer disks and scanned files as opposed to hard paper copies wherever we can, as long as it's legally permissible. And I just having run your own firm, I'd ask if you have any experience in that, in your own firm or elsewhere, or what would be, is that your view? Do you share that vision, and how do you think you could make it come about?
In the computer age that we live in today, everything is so much more readily accessible through computer documentation and scanning. I do know that in the past records, there are problems where you're going to store them, who's going to upkeep them, how you keep them in upright condition. Electronically relieves some of that burden, but it does create a burden of how you take the old records and convert them into new electronic data.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is to start going forward, and then maybe worry about the past as a phase 2. But Have you converted, moving forward in your own operation for the most part, to electronic storage, or is it a combination?
Most of the work I do is electronic and on the
Yeah.
computer.
Yeah, okay.
Sending and receiving documents and safeguarding them.
I notice in one of your skills list, you talk about petty cash, and I imagine that maybe you do that for clients, set up a petty cash system, this is how this should operate. Is that what you're referring to, or is it something else?
Petty cash, whenever you're dealing with cash or any other valuable commodity that you have, you try to put in a system of internal controls so you can safeguard those. And that is one of the first things I've learned in auditing, is that you can, the better the system of internal controls, the more you can rely on the data that you receive from that.
And so there is cash that comes into the clerk's office. How would you envision a system to kind of track that? What types of internal controls should we have in place for, I mean, it's small amounts of money, you know, $10 for a birth certificate, but there's a large volume of those, so it adds up over the course of a day or a week.
System of receipts that are numerically numbered, in which they are accounted for at the end of the day, is a simple but very satisfactory way of accumulating those. There are other vast, complicated systems that sometimes create more havoc than what they're worth.
Well, I agree, simple's best, so. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just similar to Councilor Mercia, I want to disclose that I'm the president of Lowell Youth Soccer Association, and we also come before the Board of Parks. And Lowell Youth Soccer also has travel leagues that participate in the Middlesex Travel League, and Mr. Lenahan is the president of that league. So I've spoken to the Ethics Commission, and I have filed a disclosure. But in the interest of, of open and transparent government, I thought it was important to disclose that. And I've also spoken to the law department, and they agree that I can proceed and ask questions. So I just wanted to follow up on, I've asked some similar questions to other candidates on cash, and interesting, we've got different responses from people that have worked in different offices on the receipt and transfer. What would be your suggestion? And I know you have a finance background, and I know we have implemented a new system in there. But what do you think the best way to handle receipts in the clerk's office? It's just one of many departments that do receive cash, but it is a busy office. And what would you envision as the best process?
A process where the person is, first of all, responsible for the draw that they keep themselves, but they do not have total purview over that somebody else would review their records at the end of the day to make sure that they agree. Very similar to when you're dealing with cash in a bank. We have tellers are responsible for their daily transactions, yet there's a supervisor at the end of the day that would reconcile total cash in the bank.
And in the private sector, they reconciled, they reconcile their own cash drawer, but does the supervisor get involved? Would they just go to the treasurer's office, the individuals? Because that was actually one of the responses, and I thought that was an interesting way of going about that, where the director or the supervisor does not get involved with that reconciliation on a daily basis. It just goes right, they go right to the treasurer's office.
There are various systems that you can use. The series of checks and balances, and not having one person having total control over the cash is what you're trying to safeguard against.
Okay, thank you. Secondly, I also asked this last night, where we're faced with budget cuts and shrinking resources. It's a busy office. It seems like there's more requests for more information, more certificates. How do we go about providing the same level of services with less staff? I know the staff has been reduced. What's your thoughts on that?
In this economy, I think we're all forced to do more with less, and we've all had to adjust our work schedule, our work ethic, and try to work together for a common goal. And If people work together, they can accomplish more than individuals working separately. And that would be the first thing I would try to do, is make sure that there's unity in the department and work together for the common goal.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. That answer was a perfect segue to my questions. As you probably know, there's been some turmoil in the office, and there's been loss and some employee conflict issues, presumably. So I was wondering if you could give me an example of a time where you had to help people resolve conflict together and start to work together at the end of the day.
Resolving conflict is not always easy. Trying to put principles before personalities can be tough at times. What I've always tried to do is to be open-minded to hearing what the problem might be. Mm-hmm. You have to identify the problem first before you can fix it, and where it might lead. Is it somebody not doing their job? Is it a personality? And then sitting down and trying to figure out what is the best way to kind of settle that and empower both people so they can both walk away with respect for their jobs, especially if they have to continue to work with each other.
Thank you very much. Another question. As one of the primary places where the constituents come in and see the city, what would be your strategy for creating and or maintaining a high level of customer service?
One of the first things that people see about the city of Lowell is when they come into the clerk's office. There should be a welcoming type of atmosphere where they feel welcome to come in. They feel welcome to review what city government does. And putting out the hand and helping each other is always a good way to do it. And the taxpayer is ultimately our true boss, and we're trying to keep them happy, which sometimes isn't always easy, but as long as we try, then hopefully we can succeed in presenting as the IRS once used, a safer, kinder, more gentler government.
Thank you.
Good evening, John. You have an excellent resume, excellent education, and I just have some questions. Many of the questions have been asked, but I have other questions. John, your managerial experiences, how many people work in your office? You say you're a manager of the staff.
Currently, right now, I am a sole proprietor, and it's just one myself.
It's okay.
At the height of the thing we had, there were 4 other people involved that I had direct management over.
Okay. You know, some people look at the city clerk as someone who sits behind a desk and does clerical work. That is not the case, as you well know. There's many facets of the position. You have to be right up on the open meeting laws, public hearings, the keeper of all records, budget. You have to do a budget for the office, which I see you wouldn't have a problem doing that because that's your field. Working with the general public at the counter. Attend all council meetings and subcommittee meetings, excluding vacation or personal reasons, naturally. And in your resume, you indicated your employee development. What do you mean by that?
Is trying to empower the employees that you're working with to better themselves, to seek additional educational training or training in their field, to try to be more than just what they might perceive themselves to be in that office, that they're ultimately a representative of the city helping other people.
Okay. There's an organization in the Commonwealth, the Massachusetts Clerks Association. I believe that's what. Would you join that to be more involved?
Yes.
You would. Okay. You know you'll be the justice of the peace as well.
Yes, I understand that.
You know that.
Yes, sir.
And you will perform marriage ceremonies. There is a fee that the people pay. Do you feel as though that fee should go to you, or should it go back to the city?
If I'm acting in the capacity of clerk of the city of Lowell, then that is the city of Lowell's money, and that's where it should go.
Okay. Once again, you have an outstanding education in finances, and you are a certified CPA as we speak right now.
Correct.
Okay. I have no further questions, and I wish you the best, John. I know you lived in Lowell all your life, and know your family, and you're an excellent person. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Good evening. I guess for disclosure, I sat on the planning board with your brother Tom for years, but you and I don't really know each other, but I will disclose that. Ms. Lanahan, you have a tremendous resume here, your education. A lot of the questions have been asked, so I might just try and fine-tune a few and be a little more specific. Obviously, I would be very confident that you would have a good cash system in place in the clerk's office with your background. And I think even the open meeting law, public records laws, and the things that we rely on the clerk's office to keep updated and keep people in compliance, including the boards, as you're probably aware. I think that having dealt with IRS codes and other laws, that's something that I imagine you could handle adequately. So having reviewed that piece of your resume and being confident that you would be able to handle that, my questions really revolve around your management style and your experience. Coming from a small office where you have managed up to 4 people. I think the staff is down there is comparable. Some of the issues that may come up is you come in as a clerk, if you got the job, and have to put in new processes in place in terms of document preservation, technology, and the like. How would you go about, what would your style be with the existing staff to get them acclimated, to get them on board, and to work as one?
My style would be one of hands-on, in that we are a unit there, and that we all look good or we all look bad, and that any new process that I'd be putting in place, that I would roll up my sleeves and work with them and ask for their input as to whether they believe there's a better way of doing it. They all have something to offer, and as a good leader, it's up to me to listen to them and to try to better the whole unit because of it.
Okay. And you list a number of cross-transferable skills. Do you have any experience with unions over the years? Negotiations, or just in dealing with
just in dealings with them, and there are certain criteria when we're going into things that you have to check whether you're going to go across union boundaries and what the unions might allow or not allow. A lot of it had to do with when I was in the Board of Parks, is when developments were going to be done, did it infringe on union rights? And that was something we always were aware of.
Okay. And I do want to say that thank you for your service. You've been the chair of the Board of Parks for 20 years now, and as a citizen, I do respect that, and thank you for that. I guess my last question is one I've asked pretty much all the candidates, is you're probably aware that the council is trying to move towards the electronic packet for our right now weekly meetings. In addition to, it gets delivered by a police officer, but to save some resources and to get up to the speed with the times, is moving to electronic packets. Are you familiar, with these types of documents and scanning? I believe you said you do everything pretty much electronically in your business. There's there's plans and bigger documents that have taken a little while to get it all up to speed, but is that something that you would be comfortable handling?
Yeah, I deal with Adobe files and PDF files and JPEG files quite a lot, so I do have experience in that area.
Okay. And document preservation, I think Councilor Martin asked you about that. Do you have experience in preserving old documents? This is, in the city, as you probably are aware, with some of the issues we have is document preservation, things that, the original documents from the 1950s, and that are going to need to be preserved in a better way and trying to be maintained. Do you have any experience with anything along those lines?
I've never been directly involved with preservation of old documents, but it is something that I would enjoy getting involved in. I think preserving a piece of history is always exciting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Council Broderick, and good evening again, Mr. Linehan. It's a pleasure to see you today. I too, as my colleagues have thanked you for your years of service on the Board of Parks, and I too want to thank you as well for that, and to really thank your entire family, because they've been involved in Lowell and the greater Lowell community for some time. So, and I knew your dad very, very well over the years, so he was quite a gentleman. My question has to do with, could you describe what you believe the role of the city clerk is in a city the size of Lowell? As Councilor Caulfield often says, we're the fourth largest city in the Commonwealth, and with that, in the city clerk's position comes an awful lot of responsibility. So if you could just give us your understanding as to the duties and responsibilities of the city clerk's office.
I think a clerk is one person that's going to have the inner pulse on what goes on, his connection between the city council and the taxpayer. He's got a unique link to that. That is something that it's a very serious job that he has to take, one that know the law, know how the city is protected, and also know how the taxpayer is protected. I was looking at some of the documents on the city of Lowell, and I was interested to learn that originally when Lowell was first formed, there were 2,500 taxpayers.
Mm-hmm.
Now I believe there's almost 106,000. So it has grown quite a bit, and the responsibilities of the clerk have grown over those times.
Thank you. Did you have an opportunity to read Attorney Leahy's report on the clerk's office when he was acting city clerk for a period of weeks? Did you have an opportunity to look at that report?
Yes, I did. I did look at it. I did review it.
Okay. What jumped out at you as what you as city clerk would have to deal with immediately upon taking the office?
Anything that was in conflict with Mass General Law would have to immediately be taken care of. Some of the other things would have to be prioritized and then worked out with a plan. That would include a budget plan and how some of these would be done, because there would be fiscal restraints with some of it.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Linehan. Council Murphy?
Thank you, Mr. Linehan, for being here tonight to answer our questions. I'll ask along the same lines as what I've asked other candidates. As you're probably aware, over the last year or so, the city administration has begun to introduce the concept of performance management to various departments to begin tracking data in order to improve results within those departments, and eventually, hopefully, to demonstrate those results publicly, both to the council as well as residents. What is your understanding of this kind of management strategy, and how do you see your abilities being able to carry this out, both in developing indicators to be tracked, throughout the budget, but also on perhaps a quarterly basis, so that we do ensure that we're meeting certain goals?
Performance management, I've had an opportunity to review it and look into it. The biggest thing I took from that was that you can't manage what you cannot measure. And performance management not only measured people's effectiveness, not just because that they were busy in doing their job, but how effective that they were. By setting up by computer guidelines and following criteria, it was much easier to give peer reviews over a monthly, quarterly period of time. And it didn't only apply just to personnel, it also applied to the product or type of government or type of service that you were providing. So it was very multifaceted. It was extremely interesting to see how far and where it could go.
Just to follow up a bit, Mayor Milanauzo asked the question of, what you see as the main problems that jump out at you. What kinds of indicators would you imagine developing for example, for the next budget document?
To solve some of the problems with in referring to the budget, I would look to see how much money would be allocated to the city clerk's office, because money is going to solve some of these problems. As I said, we have dwindling resources, and we have less people also trying to do the work. So trying to budget something, it becomes unprioritized, and how we can prioritize, and what can we live with right now, and what do we have to set up a plan for the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, does anyone else have any further questions? Councilor Mercia?
Thank you. Mr. Linehan, at the present time, you work for Linehan and Associates as a CPA. If for some leap of faith or whatever, and your chances are great that you get this clerk's position, how will this job affect you? Will you still work for this associate? Will you still work for the company? Or will you devote yourself entirely as the clerk? How would you handle that?
It'd be very difficult for me to be torn between two places and to give it my utmost thought and intelligence and direction to. There are a lot of people that I have had as clients for several years, and I would hopefully able to try to pass them off to associates that they would feel comfortable with. Most of it is a personal service business, and so it's going to be up to them what they would like or where they would like to go. But I could not serve two masters, no.
Well, it's kind of difficult. That's why I asked that question. Having said that, lastly, I would like to know if you have any questions for us.
One of the questions when would this person be taking this position?
That's a fair question. I thought you were going to say, when are you going to hire me? But that's what it was. But
Again, not to speak for my colleagues, but I would think that, your availability, when you would be available, we would like to fill the position. We, as you know, now have an acting city clerk who's on loan from the law department. So we'd like to be able to get Mr. Slagle back to the law department as soon as we can. So I would say immediate. The need is immediate.
Okay, thank you.
thank you. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Any additional questions from my colleagues? Hearing none, I'd like to give Mr. Linehan an opportunity to have some closing remarks.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to being interviewed by you. City government has always been a passion of mine. It's something that I've always wanted to get involved with. And I got to know and learn more about the city of Lowell and serving on the Board of Parks, and how rewarding it is to serve the people of the city of Lowell, and how proud I am of being born and brought up in Lowell. And I'd like to be able to continue that as working for the city, as being the clerk, as being a person that's out front and dealing with the taxpayer, and upholding the true values that the city council has embodied, that the city has gone through. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Linehan. We'll now take a short recess. Okay, again, thank you, Mr. Kaplan, for being here. Let me begin by really congratulating you. We had 125 applicants for the position, and we're interviewing 5 finalists, so just by virtue of being here, I want to congratulate you on behalf of my colleagues. What we've been doing is asking each candidate to give an opening statement, and then we'll go around robin of some questions, and then when the questions are over, we'll ask you to give a closing statement.
Sure.
I believe once you finish your opening statement, we're going to begin the questioning with, somebody guide me here, is it going to be Councilor Mercier or Councilor Mendonça? Councilor Mendonça. Okay, so the floor is yours, Mr. Kaplan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for the honor of considering me for this position. I'm very excited about it. I reviewed the qualifications and the expectations and reviewed the website description and find that it fits what I believe I can do and do well. I'm anxious to get back into a routine, professional, structured environment. I've done well in that before. I'm doing several things now which I enjoy thoroughly, but find they don't quite fit my lifestyle or what I want to be doing. And it's not quite as fulfilling as when I was a clerk, frankly. And I used to work for the city of Cambridge, and then more recently as town clerk at Uxbridge. I liked working for the city government. I liked working for town government, but I found cities a little bit more challenging. But I liked clerk work as well, and found that I miss it a lot more than I thought I would. So I'm looking to re-enter that world.
Thank you. Councilor Mendonça?
Very good. Thank you. We've interviewed 4 candidates before you, so we've all heard what the questions are going to be from each one. So I've got the questions I've been asking, even though we're changing the order of who asked. So I've been looking at the education, and your education level, you actually have a master's degree in public administration.
Correct.
So one of the things I've been asking is whether you've taken courses in public administration. Obviously, you have. Another item that I caught on your resume, you were a field coordinator for the Congressman's Committee to Elect. Was that a staff position or a volunteer position?
It was a staff position, and thanks for asking that. I guess that's not clear on my resume, so I appreciate that.
Okay. The question I've been asking all the candidates is, what skill do you have that you would bring to the clerk's office that you feel will be essential in that office?
Oh, many. I guess one thing I'd say is I'm very good at connecting with people. I really believe in public outreach. I've worked with clerks in other cities and towns. I think there's a tendency, and they're all efficient people who I respect very much, but I think there's a tendency to have to become so concerned with the letter of the law, a very good tendency, that sometimes it's easy to forget the human touch in that, to sometimes let people know what they need to do, should do, etc., that it becomes almost like you're becoming like a nanny and instead of explaining to people and helping them and being a resource. I think it's very easy to fall back into looking like this is what you have to do versus this is how we can help you get what you need.
You got your tenure in Uxbridge as from 2007 to 2009. If you wouldn't mind, could you tell us why you decided to leave the office? Or
there was restructuring, actually. Uxbridge had a big cutback. They had the payroll clerk, who was tenured, take that over. It was part of a restructuring after a new town manager came in. The previous town manager had hired me, so it wasn't exactly my choice. I saw it coming. I adjusted fine and have been doing fine. And as I said, like what I've been doing since, but find that I'm kind of missing that world.
All right. And it's a town manager's appointment in that town?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Councilor Martin.
Thanks. Have you signed up with another congressional candidate yet?
I haven't, no. Fortunately, and I'm telling the truth.
All right, I'm just kidding. But,
I know.
So,
I appreciate humor, that's fine.
in any event, we have issues here, and I've been one, both on the oversight subcommittee for the clerk's office, kind of been pushing to see, to get more records, fewer records in paper, stored at actually, now, some of them I know by law have to be paper records, but for the ones that don't, I think we should be taking advantage of technology, storing things in computers and, in cyberspace, or, at least on our own network here, sometimes taking advantage of the state network where that's allowed. What was your experience like in Uxbridge or previously as far as getting records stored electronically versus in hard copy?
I agree. I did a lot of that in Uxbridge. When I got there, I was very surprised how much everything was on paper. And there's a couple of problems with that. First of all, if you're going back to original records, the more you're pulling them out and making copies and handling them, the less likely it is that they're going to be preserved well. You do want to, and of course you want to preserve them. When we did work on getting them in computer in conjunction with the Bureau of Vital Statistics. They developed a program that we worked with them on, and it made the job of everyone who works in the clerk's office much easier to be able to go in, especially in vital records, to go into a computer, find what you're looking for and print it out, versus going into a vault, coughing and sneezing and everything like that over old records, and taking them out and making sure you file them right, and if they're not filed right, it takes forever to look for it while someone's waiting. So I'm very excited that the city is looking at doing that. I think it's very important. As you said, Councilor, there are many things that do have to be on paper. You do have to save it, and there are circumstances where that is preferable, but I'm all for, making digital copies whenever possible.
Okay. Thank you. Do you know, at Uxbridge, we use the Munis system here, and there are some, I think, modules available for certain functions in the clerk's office through that. Was that system in use in any of the places you worked previously, or if not, what was the kind of computer operating system you did work with, if you remember?
Munis sounds familiar. I can't guarantee that's what it was. It was a state system, though, from the Bureau of Vital Statistics. And beyond that, what we did, and it doesn't sound as impressive, but it frankly worked well, is we just scanned a lot and used, made our own digital copies. And we used interns and we used people from the senior outreach program to do that, and it was a worthwhile endeavor to have it done that way and not take up staff time, but it was a great contribution.
Well, that's something that we very much need here, I think, is there's been some use of student volunteers in other areas in City Hall, and we think that's a valuable resource, as is the senior, is that the program where seniors get some tax relief or?
Exactly.
And you had that?
Yes.
In Uxbridge? Or?
Yes, and it worked very well. It works very, very well.
And that happened under your leadership as clerk?
Yes, I solicited. I know, it's hard. Resources are sometimes tight for everything you want to do and even what you need to do. So I try to be proactive, and I did use individuals from that program as well as interns whenever I could.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. And,
Good evening.
welcome, Joseph. One of the highlights in your resume was you implemented a new poll worker recruitment and training procedures, including the production of a new Election Day manual and Election Day training curriculum and presentation. This past election, and we recently just got a report from the city manager on the challenges of recruiting poll workers for Election Day. And the report included a number of issues, one being salary levels, but again, during a time of shrinking resources. We struggle with keeping poll workers. Could you explain a little bit as to what you did to, with this implementation of a new program? How did you attract new poll workers, and could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. One thing I started in Cambridge when I was assistant director is on the census form, there was a tear-out form on the bottom if people wanted to sign up to be a poll worker. I don't know if Lowell has done that or not.
I don't know, but I don't believe so.
But you'd be surprised because virtually everyone gets a census form. I don't know if you send census forms to certain multi-units, but most people get them in most cases. There's a real perception out there that people don't know you could apply to be a poll worker, and I think that's half the battle. And that solicitation form brought out a lot of interest, and a lot of people were surprised by it. And what we did when we got like hundreds of new people who applied. Mm-hmm. And we had the election commissioners interview them and talk to them. And I think and even people who were poll workers had to apply. And I think it brought a higher sense of commitment, a higher sense of the importance of it. People who were longtime poll workers got a renewed sense that this is an important job that I'm not entitled to, but I'm privileged to have. And I think half of it was just that mindset and just putting in the papers, we're looking for poll workers, and to do the trainings, because what's important on the trainings is in recent years, election laws have changed a lot. So you have some poll workers, veteran poll workers who are terrific, but you really need to stay on top of teaching them, look, we know you always had to do A, but now you have to do B, completely different.
Do most communities that you know of, or those communities that you work with, do they have specifically an election day manual and a training? I mean, I know the city does training, and I think they're required to by law, but is there some standard that the Secretary of State offers on training, or is it individual curriculum?
It's individual, but the Secretary of State's office will send someone out if you're doing a training. They support it, they encourage it, there's no requirement for that. And by the way, I lived in the city of Melrose when I worked in Cambridge, and I got the idea from Melrose because I got the census form that had this, so I brought it to my Board of Election Commissioners and say, let's try to do that. You know, I like to think of new ideas, but I'm very happy to borrow ideas from other communities as well.
I agree. Thank you.
Sure.
It is a good idea, though, and there's no cost associated with it. Just it goes out with the census.
It makes the census form a little longer. There's probably a minuscule bump and increase of that, but nothing significant.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. I also noticed on your cover letter that you are working towards a certification as a parliamentarian. I think that's a good thing. Is that something that, how do you do that? How do you achieve that certification?
It's a written examination, actually. Anybody can join the organization. It happens to be the National Association of Parliamentarians. They have a local chapter. And the first step, anybody can join as a provisional member. Then you can choose to take a membership exam to become a regular member. I did take that, and I passed it about a year ago. It's very, very interesting. You learn a lot, and it's not just about parliamentary procedure, but the best way to take minutes, and the best way, it kind of gets into record keeping too. The whole broad range of, motions and correct ways to run meetings, that kind of thing.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thank you. I'm also interested in the poll worker training that you did, and I appreciate the hard work, but I would like you to explain something under awards and recognitions, if you could.
Sure.
The number one, it says, cited by Cambridge City Council for enhanced absentee ballot programs and constituent service delivery. Can you just explain that program that you created?
Sure. I guess just like poll workers, it's amazing the number of people who don't know that you can vote absentee. Incredible amount of people think, oh, it's too bad I won't vote, I'm going to be out of town, etc. So we did a massive publicity campaign to let people know about the availability, how you can come in and vote over the counter. If you're going to apply through the mail timetable, you should follow. How certain family members can apply. And the challenge was to not only publicize it, but publicize it correctly, because people can also get in trouble if they vote absentee when they're not supposed to. As you probably know, we don't have at-will voting in this state. It's supposed to be one of 3 specific reasons to vote absentee. So we wanted to make sure that people who need to know about it, and can take advantage of it without encouraging people who shouldn't be voting absentee from voting absentee. And also we did a massive, Cambridge I think has 7 nursing homes. So we wanted to make sure that we went in there at certain times, encouraged people to vote, really boosted the turnout in those localities as well.
We seem very knowledgeable about this particular area. Do you happen to have numbers in terms of how much increased absentee voter turnout there was during this period?
I could provide them. The problem is, as you know, from one election, I could say, well, in the municipal election, only 7% voted absentee, and in the presidential, 15% did, but that could partially at least reflect how many more people voted on a presidential anyway. So it's hard for me to take it, to take credit for that.
Fair enough.
So,
I do have one more question.
Sure.
So it shows here that you're part of, or were probably not anymore, part of the City Clerks Association and the Mass Town Clerks Association. Would you intend to, if you got this position, rejoin those? And then can you explain maybe your strategy for taking some best practices, ideas that you learned from those and bringing them back to the City of Lowell?
Sure. Yeah, I would really like to rejoin the association. I learned a lot from that. I found that their classes were very invaluable. I think it's very important to become certified, and I have that ambition to be certified. I can't join if I'm not hired. Or hired by someone. But as important as an enjoyable, I'm sorry, I should turn around more, as enjoyable as the classes were, and as useful as they were, I found it was also helpful to, really chat up with other clerks during lunch and dinner and breakfast and all that kind of stuff. We traded best practices all the time. I got some ideas for the training manual. And people got ideas from me and about absentee voting and everything like that. And not only that, it's always kept in touch with clerks between the meetings too, to not feel that you have to wait until you're at a conference to talk to them or trade ideas, but to, feel free to call them and let them call you and send out emails, and we had email groups and everything like that. And to keep, the clerks are very supportive of each other in the state. So it's very important to be a part of that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Kaplan, how are you?
Good, sir. How are
Don't
you?
mind if I call you Joseph?
Feel free, sure.
Thank you. I had the pleasure of meeting you in the lobby. We both came into City Hall together. I just want to bring up another question Councilman Donza brought up. In 2007, 2009, you were the Uxbridge Town Clerk. And the town manager relieved you, he brought someone else in?
Yeah, it was part of restructuring. He had to cut back on staff, and the Board of Selectmen.
But they still had a town.
Right, he combined payroll clerk with town. The payroll clerk was continuing her duties and took over as town clerk as well.
I never heard of that.
I know.
How did you find out about this position?
A couple of clerks actually told me about it.
Are you a member of the Mass Municipal Association?
No, I'm not a municipal worker now, so I'm not, but a couple of town clerks, including my own town clerk, told me about this position.
And have you been interviewed or pursued this position in other communities since the Uxbridge job?
No, I haven't. I've pursued full-time opportunities, but no. That frankly, there really haven't been a whole lot that have come up, that I've heard of anyway.
Okay, your resume indicates you're a consultant organizer for the Grace Team. What is the Grace Team? And is that a paid salary?
Yes, it's a nonprofit organization that advocates for training of people, trades training for people who are unemployed, for job creation, and for putting people in touch with resources that are out there who need them.
So, Joseph, you've had 2 years' experience as a clerk.
Right, correct.
How many,
2.5.
what's the population of Uxbridge?
The population of Uxbridge was, I think it was close to 20,000.
20,000.
Yeah.
Okay, in your resume, it specifies that you had an affiliation with the city of Cambridge, and you received many awards and recognition. Is that what your hometown is, Cambridge?
No, I actually never lived in Cambridge. It's amazing. I worked there so long and got involved so much. Many people to this day, even many of my friends, think I'm of Cambridge, but I never lived there.
Okay. And you are still the Justice of the Peace.
That's right.
Did you perform marriages in Uxbridge as a clerk?
Not really. I became Justice of the Peace while I was there. I was probably there a good year before I became a Justice of the Peace.
Okay.
My assistant was a Justice of the Peace, and I just let her do whatever business came like that because she wanted that. And she always did it outside, so I did not we never did it in the office. So.
Okay. How many employees were in the clerk's office in Uxbridge?
Besides myself, there was one other full-time, but there was occasionally a part-time person there as well, depending on the time of year, and frequently would bring in interns or people for the senior tax work-off program.
Okay. Well, the city clerk's office in this city, it's the 4th largest city in the Commonwealth, and very, very busy. Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, many people coming in, looking for birth certificates, death certificates, dog licenses, etc. And the city clerk is the keeper of all records. You work very closely with the mayor. Public hearings, the open meeting laws, attend all council meetings, with the exception of vacation or personnel reasons, and work very closely with the council. That's the planning form of government we have here. They have an excellent resume and great education. And
thank you.
And I don't have any further questions, but if you did receive this position, where do you live now, Joseph?
Mansfield.
Mansfield, that's quite a ways from here.
It is.
If you received this position, would you move to Lowell?
I'll tell you, I've never been late for work, ever, except when it's planned. If I needed to move here, I certainly would. I'd have no hesitation doing that at all.
You don't have any intentions of moving here if you get the job?
I've never thought of it, to tell you the truth, but, if it became necessary or desirable or
Well, the city council can't tell you you have to move here.
Right, I understand that.
I think it has to come from you.
Right. If I could work my life living where I like and working where I like and it didn't interfere, I wouldn't move for the sake of moving, but certainly if I found that where I lived was prohibiting me from performing my duties, I certainly would do that.
Okay, thank you, Joseph.
You're welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for your interest in coming here tonight. As you can tell, a lot of the questions have been taken, and Council Caulfield just took 2 or 3 more of mine. So I'm going to ask you some kind of specific questions here. You have some experience, obviously, as a clerk in the town of Uxbridge. You indicated, I think, that you supervise basically a staff of 1 essentially. Did you supervise, do you have any other supervisory experience, either with the Election Commission in Cambridge or any of the other roles in your experience?
Yes, in Cambridge, I supervised three were under me when I was assistant director of the Election Commission. And, well, depending on the time of year, sometimes up to 8. That would vary a lot. And in Uxbridge, of course, I did supervise all of the poll workers. And actually, in Cambridge, I supervised the census takers. So I am used to doing supervising larger staffs than I had as town clerk in Uxbridge. And by the way, I do want to say, if you don't mind, going back to Councilor Caulfield's comments about the Plan E, I am familiar with Plan E because that's what Cambridge is. And I did serve as liaison to city departments, particularly the city clerk's office, and I worked well with the city clerk there, so I'm familiar how she worked with the mayor and the councilors and everything like that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Hey, how would you describe your management style?
Collaborative. I guess I believe in buy-in, and I like to have a team spirit. I like to bring everyone on board. I don't like to say, we're doing this. I hope you like it, but if you don't, suck it up. I like people to understand why we're doing things the way they're doing, and I like to take ideas and suggestions from other people, because I think it's important not only for people to feel they have buy-in, but frankly, sometimes people do get better ideas, no matter what position you're in.
Okay, and on your resume, you point to instituted new auditing, record-keeping, and financial procedures, which include paper audit trails. Could you explain that? We have had an issue. You're probably aware of some of the issues that have gone on. Could you explain what you did? What was the new procedures?
Sure. Well, what surprised me when I got to Uxbridge, and I don't want to elaborate over much because I don't want to, I don't like to criticize other people's work, but there was a system where if people came in and they bought a vital record, birth, death, marriage, that they had this system where they just made a little tick mark on the counter and they counted it up, and there was no record of what kind of vital statistic was requested or looked at or bought. And we used to report our revenue, but there was no record of what was bought or anything like that. And frankly, it wasn't even up to code with the public record law. So I designed forms that people would request what kind of record they were seeking, what kind of copy they were seeking, what their name was, what their address was. There were certain laws, of course, when you were dealing with people going through court cases or adoptions and that kind of thing where it was sealed or the information couldn't be made public. But a lot of information was not there. And I even worked with the police chief in that, because sometimes before I got there, people were looking for records for reasons that weren't noble. So that I was happy I was able to get that, to form that paper trail. Not that I want more paper, but sometimes I need a paper trail, so.
All right. And just a couple more questions here. The last two of your bullets here under the Uxbridge Town Clerk position, if maybe you could take these two together, because I think this is important, and we're striving to get more outreach in the public and through any means possible. Develop community outreach programs and public education campaigns, and upgraded procedures for constituent service delivery. I don't know if you could kind of take those together, or could you give us some examples of what you did there?
Sure. Use the press a lot more, press releases for everything. And again, tried presenting it in a way, not this is when you have to have your dog license, but this is when you should have it done by, questions or concerns, this is how you contact us, that kind of thing. I also did a lot of outreach to civic organizations. Cambridge and Uxbridge both had a lot of organizations, civic organizations. I tried meeting with them. I tried getting their buy-in on programs. Animal shelters for dog licenses, business organizations for business certificates. you know, made it a point of not agreeing or disagreeing with their complaints, but willing to take in their ideas that could enhance enforcement of you know, different rules and regulations, of doing public education, of being a presence, of being out in the public, of letting people know who I am, of letting people know, yeah, this by law, this is what you have to do, but we'll work together. It doesn't have to be antagonistic.
Okay, thank you. That's all
You're
I have.
welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Bruddock. Again, Joseph, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I have a couple of questions. What would you describe as the key role or the most important role of a city clerk in a city the size of Lowell? How would you?
I think, you know, I mean, obviously there's the legal requirements of keeping the records, and all of that is very, very important. But I think to be a positive face for the city, to be a clearinghouse for information, to help people seek out the services or the information they're looking for, even if you're not the direct provider. I've never been the type to say, well, that's not us, have a good life. You know, it's, let's find out where you should go for this type of thing. So I guess to be a good clearinghouse of information and to be a resource.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned that in your opening statement that you're looking to get back into the field since you've spent some time, obviously, as a public employee. Have you kept abreast of the changes that have taken place with the open meeting law? I believe it was last April of 2010 that the law did change. Have you kept abreast of those changes?
Yeah, I have, because I'm in touch with clerks. I mean, I can't say I would know as much as someone who's a clerk now, or as much as I would know if I was in Uxbridge. And I'm certainly eager to catch up with that, but I am aware that there have been some changes.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, I see from your resume that you do have, as was mentioned, an MPA from Suffolk University, and you also received you did some graduate research on ethics education. My question is, did you take Dr. Frances Burke at Suffolk?
Yes, I did.
You
I
did.
did. And she encouraged me to write that paper. And
You did.
yes, and that was a very exciting course.
Okay, well, I guess under full disclosure and transparency, I graduated from Suffolk and actually taught there from 96 to 98 on summers. So I see you probably graduated in what, 89 or 90?
89, that's right.
89, so no conflict there. But Dr. Burke was a very good ethics teacher.
Yeah, she was. It was
Fortunately, she gave me an A-, but that's a whole other story. But
right.
Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you.
So Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Mr. Kaplan, for answering all of our questions. Over the last year, the city administration has begun to introduce the concept of performance management to a number of departments, both to use internally as a management tool to understand how to improve results, but also externally to improve transparency of the department, both for the public and certainly for the city council to really conduct its role of oversight. Could you speak to your understanding of this kind of strategy, or perhaps even your experience with it, and how you might carry it out in terms of developing an annual budget, as well as preparing for regular meetings in conducting that proper oversight?
Of performance management?
Yes.
Cambridge did some of that. I don't think Uxbridge did as much. I believe I think it's good to have guidelines in place, to have goals and objectives, and I think it motivates people, and I think it also helps guide people. You know, people need to know what their expectations are in order to meet them, and I think it's good for everyone to be into that, while also recognizing the constraints and the benefits that certain departments have. In Cambridge, they had a very good employee training program about those, and they offered programs on human relations, human interactions, Budgeting, I mean, a lot of it sounds touchy-feely, and maybe some of it was, but it was also very beneficial. And I always took advantage of those programs when I could and received a lot of certificates in that area.
I'm not sure how familiar you are with the problems that are, exist within our clerk's department, but what would you see is certain indicators that you might develop for that annual budget to be able to track throughout the year?
For the annual budget, what I would do is look at what the annual budget has, not only has been, but how has it worked? Were things followed that way or not? Were the budgets realistic? Were they under budget? Were they over budget? Look at other cities of similar size to see what their budgets are, see what the expectations are, see what the wants and needs are, to be able to say if the council wants us to do this, or that's fine, but we need the resources in order to carry it through, to really collaborate with other staff to get their ideas and expectations as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Kaplan.
Good evening.
Thank you very much for showing your interest in the city of Lowell by coming down here, applying for this position. I know that Mansfield, where you live, is like 42 miles away from Lowell, so you wouldn't mind driving 84 miles every day. That'd be tough.
Well, I either would not mind it, or going back to Councilor Caulfield, I'd move. So one or the other. I mean, it's not going to be a hindrance for me being here.
And who's the town manager of, who's the city manager of Cambridge?
He's relatively new, William Ross. Am I getting his-
Cambridge?
Oh, I'm sorry, Cambridge. Robert Healy.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you. He lives in Lowell.
That's right, exactly.
Just thought I'd just tell you that. Now, when you were the town clerk in Uxbridge, you said that you were a justice of the peace, but you did not, afterwards you became a justice of the peace. The assistant clerk did the marriages, right?
I became a justice of the peace while I was there.
Okay.
I think I'm a year into it. We did not perform marriages in the office. If people came in looking for a justice of the peace because she was there already and was already doing it, I let her do it. I did do marriages.
And did you
but not
charge people when they came in to get married?
We didn't do marriages in there. She would marry them on their own in her home, or
Oh, I see.
yeah, we didn't
Well,
do
let's
one.
say that the position in the city of Lowell here is that you marry someone and you charge a fee of $100, and let's say that it went to you. Would you keep that, or what would you do with that
During city hours,
on city property?
I wouldn't feel comfortable keeping it, no.
Okay, thank you. What quality or skill do you have that you bring with you to the clerk's office?
I believe I'm a good organizer and a good administrator. I believe in serving the public. I try to be collaborative. I try to be resourceful and helpful, and try to bring clarity of what needs to be done, be unambiguous, and build a team within the office and not allow personal disputes to overcome our objective of what we should be doing.
Well, what if you found there were personal disputes in your office? How would you handle that?
I mean, there inevitably is personal disputes. I think the important thing, I mean, you can't make people like each other or anything like that, but the important thing to let people know that they're expected to perform their jobs, that they're going to have to work, together when they have to, that they don't have to love each other necessarily, but they do have to show respect for each other, that I'm not interested in how arguments happened or what personal disagreements they have, but what I would be looking at is how they're performing, how they're functioning, and how they're not letting personal feelings affect their jobs.
Because you do think it's important that people in that department need to communicate with each other, don't you?
They need to communicate with each other, and they need to not be competitive with each other. you know, they need to understand they're both working toward the same goals of serving the public. They don't have to go to dinner with each other every night or anything like that at all. You know, I never ask people to get along with people they don't particularly like. That's their right, but it can't come into the office. It has to stay out of there.
And may I ask you lastly, what question would you have for any of us here? Do you have any questions?
Yeah, a couple of them. We talked about staff. I guess I would be curious what the staff structure is, not just how many people work, but, you know, what the different positions are there. You know, without, and I guess what challenges are maybe facing it now. You know, I don't want to judge anything that's happened before, but I'd like to know challenges that need to be faced, that type of thing.
I can tell you, and actually I'll probably defer to Angela Gitchi, our Assistant City Clerk. Angela is the Assistant City Clerk, and within the department there are 4 additional employees. Angela, correct?
Yeah, there are 4 employees, myself, and the city clerk.
Thank you.
And there are a number of challenges, as a number of my colleagues had indicated this evening. There are a number of challenges facing the city clerk's office. Angela's been a long-time employee there and certainly knows the office. But we're looking to really modernize the office, less paper, as Council Martin had talked about, and just put policies and procedures in place that have not been in place for some time. So those are really the immediate challenges, I think, facing the new clerk.
Yeah, and I also like when I work anywhere, I'd like to sit down with everyone, one-on-one, you know, what do you think works, what doesn't work as well as it should, what do you like, what don't you like, you know, I really try to get as much feedback as possible and be responsive to that as well.
Thank you. Any other questions at this point? Councilor Mendonça, Councilor Martin?
Just a quick follow-up. Councilor Caulfield asked if you had applied for other clerk's positions since leaving Uxbridge. Your answer was?
No, I don't believe so. I did apply for Braintree and Stoughton, but I think that was before Uxbridge.
Okay. Well, I ran across an article where you were a candidate in Braintree in 2009, so I think that was after.
So maybe that
Uxbridge.
was after.
That's why I just asked to let you clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Martin?
I was wondering what the National Writers Union is. It's an organization you have listed here that you belong to.
Yes, it's an organization of writers. They mostly freelance writers, not periodical writers. Freelance writers. It's technically a union, but I find it more to be a professional association, trading ideas, finding job leads, that type of thing.
Fair enough. I just noticed it's affiliated with the United Auto Workers, so I wondered if it meant what I thought it meant, or you were stenciling cars or something.
No, I know it's an odd thing. You know, I'm lucky to start my car, and to say I'm a member of UAW is strange, but I am.
Fair enough. And I just, our former colleague, former Mayor Fleming, is a certified parliamentarian, although it's probably many degrees beyond just a certification that he has at this point, so I bet I got it wrong. He tells me the convention's pretty wild, though.
Thank you, Councilor Martin. Any other questions, Councilor Caulfield?
It's not a question, Joseph, but just a comment that the clerk's office, it's a very dedicated staff. It's extremely busy, Monday through Friday, and Friday, it's hectic, because not only are you reaching out and servicing the public, but the clerk and the assistant clerk is preparing for the council meeting the following Tuesday. You have the agenda, motions, etc. So it's like Filene's basement on a Friday, and I've seen it sometimes even worse than Filene's basement. So it's very, very. But the staff is excellent; they get through it, and I just want to let you know, it's not Uxbridge, believe me.
I think Council Caulfield really means that it was before Filing's basement closed.
Have good deals like that, too?
At this point, we give you an opportunity to have a closing statement.
Sure, well,
Again, thank you for being here.
thank you. It's been nice talking to all of you. I appreciate your questions. I hope I answered well. I feel I need to get to the chiropractor again. I don't turn my neck as good as I like. This is very exciting. It leaves me very confident that I could perform well if you hire me. And in any case, I am honored for your consideration. And hopefully I'll hear something soon. I don't know what the
Yes.
timetable is. And in the meanwhile, if you have any more questions or find anything lacking or confusing, you're certainly welcome to contact me as well.
Great. Thank you, Joseph, very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Why don't we take a 2-minute recess? Thank you. Thank you again, Joseph. At this point, that does conclude the interviews that were scheduled for the position. I guess I'd be looking to my colleagues for some direction. Councilman Donza?
I guess we could move at our next meeting Tuesday to continue with the process of selecting the city clerk
Okay.
from the candidates that we've interviewed.
Okay, so I guess what I would do, if it's okay with the council, is to ask the law department and the city clerk's office to put an agenda item, I guess unfinished business, as an agenda item for Tuesday night, dealing with this selection process.
Would that be an actual vote, Mr. Mayor?
It could, yes, that night, yes.
Possibly could be a
Possibly could
vote.
be, yes, yes. Just to keep things moving along. Council Broderick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, do we want to decide how we're going to vote? Is it going to be, someone makes a motion for a candidate and we take a roll call, or are we going to take
Well,
a?
we could, again, it's up to the council. If you want, we could have you name a name when your name is called, or someone could make a motion. I think that, okay, we'll do the former.
Naming names? Name a
names.
name, okay,
Correct.
and go, are we going to go roll
Go-
call order?
We'll actually go whatever
roll
the
call.
order is coming up
Roll
on
call
Tuesday, so
order.
I think it's going to start with Councilor Mercia.
Oh, dear.
Yes.
Is that right?
No pressure.
No pressure. Let me just confirm that with the Assistant City Clerk. We started with Councilman Donza this evening. Yeah. Right.
It-
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, then,
I'm sorry, Council Broderick.
thank you. After, assuming we have a majority, are we then going to decide about negotiating and there's a salary range, but
Correct.
take a vote on that? Okay.
Correct.
I just
We can
figured it'd be
that.
better to
We
do
can
it
do that
now.
under the unfinished business heading, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Council Caulfield.
Mr. Mayor, first of all, I want to thank you, the Law Department, Human Resources, Mary Callery, Chris O'Connor, everyone involved, bringing this process forward. I think it was handled remarkably well.
Thank you.
I think the council gave every candidate an excellent interview, a chance to be interviewed, and I want to thank all those candidates for coming forward, some of them living far away. But Tuesday night, Mr. Mayor, it's just going to be a simple roll call vote, and the councilor would select that person, and whoever gets the majority votes, that candidate would be the new city clerk.
Correct, but just to be clear, if when we call, say we call Mayor Milanazzo and I give a name.
Right,
Right,
definitely,
right, as
definitely.
opposed to someone making a motion saying.
Definitely.
Right, okay.
What if there's a tie?
What if there's a tie? Well, I guess I would.
Nine.
Yes, they
I'm sorry?
could. There could be 3 candidates get 3 votes.
Right, right. You're right.
We-
Round 2, that's right.
Okay.
We have to have at least 5 votes to be appointed, correct?
Well, when I was a candidate for city manager back a long time ago, it was 44 ballots, so.
56.
Is it majority?
Yes, that's correct, right. I'm sorry, Councilor Elliott.
Is it majority, Madam Solicitor? I mean, 4/5, or, I mean,
Simple majority, I
A
believe.
simple majority.
simple majority, so
majority,
we're not,
right.
okay.
5, yeah. Thank you. And what I did, just so the public knows, that I did speak with Councilor Dakota earlier, and she's going to get a copy of the tape from last night, so she'll be able to go over the interviews that took place last night. So she'll be fully brought up to speed. Any other comments or questions? Thank you all very much. I too want to thank Mary Callery and Angela and the city solicitor for being here this evening and for participating in the process. And Diane Banowski from the mayor's office was very helpful as well, so thank you. Motion to adjourn by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilman Donson. We stand adjourned. Thank you.